Good morning. It is Wednesday, the 25th of March. I'm Maeve McMahon and you're watching Europe Today, your daily dose of European news and analysis, live here on Euronews. Coming up, Iran has fired a new wave of missiles towards Israel, and Israel has been responding in a sharp escalation of the Middle East conflict. This comes just hours after President Donald Trump said US-Iran talks were on the table. He sent a 15-point plan. With Lebanon descending further into chaos, we'll be speaking to the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. And the Commission has called on Budapest to clarify reports suggesting Foreign Minister Peter Cierto was in close contact with his Russian counterpart before and after EU summit meetings. But first, Denmark, the EU member state known for Lego, Hygge and its opt-out from the euro, held snap elections just yesterday. Incumbent centre-left Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen is set to hold on to the reins. But her Social Democratic Party had a bruising night and failed to secure a majority. Mette Frederiksen called the votes earlier than expected due to her surge in popularity over her handling of the US president's threat to annex Greenland, an autonomous Danish territory. But Denmark now faces weeks of coalition talks on elections that, as I said, saw voters called earlier to the polls. For the latest, we can bring in Benny Engelbrecht, Danish politician and a member of the Prime Minister's Social Democratic Party. Good morning, Benny. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's just first together take a look at the actual results of that election. We saw the Socialists coming out with 21.9%, the Green Left with 11.6% and the Liberals at 10.1%. So we see the Socialists there. You're holding on to power just about, but this was not the outcome that you wanted.
No, definitely not. Everyone, of course, would like to see a better result than we got. On the other hand, the three parties in the broad-based coalition government that has been ruling for the past 3.5 years, well, all suffered. So I think this is a general concept that you see all across, especially in Europe at these times, that the parties that take responsibility in government also lose a bit of votes on voting days. And well, in Denmark we have almost a Netherlands type of parliament now with 12 parties and only the Social Democratic Party as a broad-based party with more than 20%. So it will be really difficult for
and I can see that written all over your face this morning. Do you expect now months of tough talks? When could a coalition be formed?
Well, the broad-based coalition that has ruled up until now took 6 weeks to set in place. That was a record-setting negotiation for the past government. And I expect that we'll see probably something similar to that, probably not before after Easter. We'll see actual talks. So it'll be difficult and setting the task that there's a war in the Middle East and Donald Trump still wants Greenland. It will, well, of course, we will need to sort this out quite soon.
But voters, of course, had bread and butter issues on their minds, not really Greenland. Did you underestimate that?
No, I think the domestic discussions has been, of course, the majority of the discussions, but it has been more to do with clean water, for example.
Okay, Benny Engelbrecht, thank you so much for joining us here this morning live on Europe Today here on Euronews. We'll keep a very close eye on the next couple of weeks there. But moving on from one crucial election to another, Hungarians will be heading to the polls on the 12th of April. But ahead of the key votes, a major scandal has hit the Hungarian government regarding alleged leaks of private information to Russia. Jakub Janis takes a look.
A political bomb exploded in Brussels.
The reports regarding the Hungarian foreign minister allegedly disclosing to his Russian counterpart the closed-door ministerial-level discussion in the Council are greatly concerning, and we expect the Hungarian government to provide the clarifications.
So what's going on here? A Washington Post investigation claims Hungarian Foreign Minister Peter Cierto spent years stepping out of confidential EU meetings to directly phone Russian officials. And one security official stated that Moscow has basically been behind the table of every EU meeting for years. The European Commission wants answers, but others are not so shocked. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk admitted long-standing suspicions, revealing he strictly limits what he says out loud during these talks. And Budapest is not hiding their connections. Szijjártó has visited Moscow 16 times since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Meanwhile, Hungary is actively blocking a 90 billion EU loan for Kiev. In an unexpected burst of honesty, Szijjártó admitted calling Russian officials before and after key EU meetings. He claims he also speaks to American, Turkish and Israeli officials, arguing this is just diplomacy. However, this is the same minister who was awarded Russia's Order of Friendship a year before Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And the Americans, Turks and Israelis have not handed him any similar medal. Perhaps the only thing left to add here is a quote from a movie, Naked Gun.
Please disperse! Nothing to see here!
It's quite funny, but it's just a pity. All of that is about the future of European security. Especially since over 70% of Europeans are now highly worried about nearby conflicts, according to the latest Eurobarometer survey. So who's laughing now?
And for more on this story, we're joined here on set by Euronews' EU editor, Maria Tadeo. Good morning, Maria. So just fill us in. What is the latest now?
Well, look, Maeve, this is a scandal that continues. And of course, at the core of it is allegations, very serious allegations, that Hungary shared private EU information with Russia. But we need to get the timeline right because, of course, over the weekend, this all started with a newspaper report, the Washington Post, which cited a European security source that suggested that the Hungarian foreign minister in particular would share information almost in real time with his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov. This report also said that in some situations he even spoke to him during breaks of meetings. So as I say, the allegations are extremely serious. Now, initially, the Hungarian foreign minister Szijjártó said that this was all fake. He said it is fake news and that this was not true. Then, of course, on the Monday, a transcript of a call allegedly between the Hungarian foreign minister and the Russian foreign minister began to do the rounds. And then Szijjártó changed the tune to say, well, this is normal because we speak to many countries and that is a part of diplomacy. Yesterday in comments to Euronews, which I want to read out to you and hopefully we can put up on the board, the Hungarian foreign ministry said that they talked to Russia, the Americans, the Turks, Serbia, and therefore it is completely normal that we consult with these countries if necessary before and after the meetings. So now he is talking about before and after EU meetings, about the consequences of those decisions. So you see how the timeline has now changed from its total fake news to this is part of normal diplomacy. Having said that, we should note that Russia is not just any country for the EU. Russia is heavily sanctioned by the EU because of the invasion of Ukraine. Increasingly, a number of EU countries consider it a hostile country to the EU, certainly a security risk for the European Union. And none of the countries represented across the board in EU meetings have given their consent so that private information, which is supposed to be confidential under the principle of sincere cooperation, be shared with Russia. So this is far from normal. If anything, the position of the Hungarians is a total anomaly.
And that's why we've seen Prime Minister Donald Tusk of Poland. He's furious, right?
Well, the Polish are really pushing into this line. Yesterday, the Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, the behavior of the Hungarian foreign minister is, quote, a disgrace. He also repeated a line that he said over the weekend. He is the first and at this point only EU leader to have commented on this. But he did say over the weekend that for many years he suspected this. And therefore, that's why Poland is very cautious about the information it shares and also introduce a new element that goes beyond the EU to now focus on NATO, saying that there were concerns going all the way back to 2019 that Hungary is also providing information related to NATO. And this is delicate because, of course, you're talking about core security. Let's take a look.
As early as 2019, as I recall correctly, Lithuania requested that the Hungarian delegation should be excluded from meetings at NATO. They informed that they suspect the Hungarian delegation to pass highly confidential information to Moscow.
So that is, of course, the Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, who said, again, the behavior from Hungary is, quote, a disgrace. NATO matters, because here you're talking about core security capabilities, incredibly sensitive. I should also note, just very briefly, the Polish government is also using this to tackle the Polish President Nawrocki, who went to Hungary this week to celebrate the Polish-Hungarian friendship. What the Polish government says, of course, is that this shows poor judgment on behalf of the Polish president, who yesterday is getting a lot of heat on this, repeated that nothing has changed. The position of Poland remains that Vladimir Putin is, quote, a war criminal.
And meanwhile, what can Brussels do? What can the Commission do?
Well, that's a very good question. It's a question that I put to sources yesterday. Some of them told me, look, this is a scandal. It's outrageous. It's unacceptable, but also said, color me shocked, color me surprised. There's been concerns for years now that when you talk to the Hungarians, you're not just talking to the Hungarian authorities. A diplomat told me this is why we've switched the way that we work. Increasingly, there's a coalition of the willing, so countries that get together that do not include Hungary to talk about security. There's also now a question about should the format of meetings be changed. Sometimes phones do get taken in. There is restrictive format, but this is not always applied into every meeting. And we've seen that the head of the European diplomacy, Kaja Kallas, is now demanding an answer from the Hungarians saying, did you share or not information, whether it was before or after. The point we need to stress is that none of the EU 26 countries around the table consented to this information being shared with Russia in any way, shape, or form. And this is certainly going to now prompt a conversation around how do you deal with a country like Hungary, and is there a different way in which sensitive information should be shared across the EU institutions? As I said, it doesn't come as a surprise, but it now highlights what many member states have now said has become a core problem, which is the use and the sharing of confidential information related to EU fundamental matters like foreign policy and security.
OK, Maria Steo, thank you so much for that very comprehensive update. We'll keep an eye on euronews.com for your reporting. But now, moving on, the war in Iran is still escalating despite calls or claims from President Trump that peace talks were imminent. On the one hand, the Pentagon has ordered about 2,000 soldiers to be deployed to the Middle East. But on the other hand, the US has sent Iran a 15-point plan to end the war in the region. Meanwhile, Pakistan has offered to host talks between the US, Israel and Iran to try to end the war. For more, we can cross now to Dubai, where our regional correspondent Jane Witherspoon is standing by for us this morning. Jane, any hope of diplomacy here? We heard Iran says the US only wants to talk on its terms.
Well, yes, President Trump has said that those talks are happening, that the US are talking to the right people. He's also alluded very cryptically to a very big present in the way of oil and gas being gifted from Tehran. Now, as you mentioned, several media agencies are reporting on that 15-point plan that has apparently been given to Iran from the US via Pakistan. However, Iranian officials are still denying that these talks are even taking place. Now, in Doha yesterday, there was a Ministry of Foreign Affairs briefing where the authorities said they will not be mediating these talks as they're too busy protecting and defending their country. They did say, however, Iran has been here for millennia. Countries need to live and work together, and it's now really up to Iran to reinforce that trust across the region.
And meanwhile, Jade, what is the general mood there? Is still daily life very much disrupted?
Well, yes, I must say that the attacks are still continuing. However, they have dropped a little bit. It feels a little bit calmer. However, overnight, we are having the military jets patrolling through the night. It feels like every 5 minutes. Now, across the wider region, of course, Lebanon is
OK, apologies to our viewers there for that technical difficulty. But as you heard there, Jane Witherspoon reporting for us there from Dubai, alluding to the atrocities in Lebanon. Well, on that point of Lebanon, coming up, we'll be joined by Barham Salih, the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. A refugee himself who fled as a young Kurd from repression in Iraq. He spent years and years in exile, but then one day actually became the president of Iraq back in 2018, a position he held until 2022. Welcome, sir. Pleasure to have you here with us.
Thank you for having me.
So just describe the situation on the ground in Lebanon.
It's a very dire situation. More than 1 million people have already been displaced, and it's in very, very harsh conditions. Our teams are working to deliver assistance, and in that regard, I have to say, EU has been generous to providing 2 jets of supplies, also the government of Italy as well as Irish aid, but we need more.
Indeed, the European Union has been sending millions in aid, but whereas the European Union has no say here in how this war will play out, how bad will the situation get in Lebanon in your view?
I hope this thing will be put behind us before long, because we need peace. This conflict has gone on already for far too long. It's highly destabilizing. It is escalating. And I have to say also, human lives are at stake. The impact on civilians across the region is phenomenal, is profound. We already, as I said, about 1 million people have been internally displaced in Lebanon. Nearly 600,000 to 1 million households in Iran have been displaced. Of course, there has been significant population movements in the Gulf, not to mention Iraq, that has been subject to terrible attacks, including yesterday in the Kurdistan region. And the civilians across the region, in Israel, in Lebanon, in the Gulf, in Iran, are being affected in a profound way. And in that context also, this conflict is spilling beyond the immediate region. We are seeing a lot of Afghan refugees in Iran and in Pakistan are being forced to go back under adverse conditions to Afghanistan. All of this combined is really presenting us with a terrible humanitarian challenge.
Pakistan have offered to mediate here. Any hope in those?
Let's hope that this will lead to some useful, tangible peace arrangement. This region needs peace. This conflict cannot go on like this, destabilizing and impacting human lives across the region. And I hope that we need a durable and just peace that will not put us in a place where 6 months from now or a year from now, we will have another recurrence of this type of things. This region cannot afford these cycles of violence.
And you described so many people on the move in the region. Should Europe prepare for potential waves coming here?
At the moment, most of the displacement is within the countries. Our teams at UNHCR are already monitoring the situation very closely. There is no significant movements across the borders beyond that, what I spoke about in Afghanistan, that people from Iran, Afghani refugees in Iran and Pakistan to a degree are being sent back or encouraged to go back or pushed back. But across the borders, we do not see that. We are also seeing, in order to put things in proper context, a large number, nearly 130,000 Syrian refugees who were resident in Lebanon have gone back into Syria. I would not call that voluntary returns per se. They are returning under adverse conditions, but in order to put the picture complete, our teams are looking at that situation, and I hope the world as a whole, we will be paying enough attention to bring this situation under control, to lead to a peace that will be lasting and basically rooted in the protection of interests of the peoples of the region, respectful of the dignity and the rights of the peoples across that region. This region has seen too many wars and too many cycles of conflict.
So what would your message then be to President Trump, who doesn't really seem to have a plan here?
Well, message is peace. Message is de-escalation and dialogue. That's we have to be emphatic about this.
And what about his board of peace?
The board of peace has already been very active in Gaza, and thank God the active conflict in Gaza has been brought to an end, at least for a while, and let's hope that it will deliver something tangible for the people of Gaza and the region as a whole.
Okay, Barham Salih, thank you so much, UN High Commissioner for Refugees. Thank you so much for coming into us here on Euronews. And thank you so much for watching. That brings this edition of Europe Today to an end. Stay with us here on Euronews for more news coming up, and visit euronews.com for more comprehensive details on all the stories we're covering for you. Take care and see you soon on Euronews.